Okay, so I kind of want to go ahead and continue our coverage over Kurt Busiek and George Perez run on the Avengers. And we do pick up with the second half of the first volume of their run on the Avengers. And so, with that being said, we're going to cover today issues 4, 5, and 6. Now, 5 and 6 are technically a two-part story arc where it's going to be our heroes going up against another group of characters that we have not really talked about in a good while on the channel. But at the same time, before we are able to dive into that two-part story arc, we got to cover issue number 4 first. And the reason why, because the fourth issue is really more of having Marvel clean up the idea of who's going to be on the Avengers on this run. Because in our last video, we had saw that when it came to Morgan Le Fay attacking all the different Avengers over the years all at once, you had all the different Avengers come together to fight against her, which honestly was a really cool storyline. But at the end of that storyline, you have Beast bring up a very good question like, hey, what are we going to do with 64 different members of the Avengers? And so, with him saying that, the fourth issue of their run was, like I said, a way for them to try to trim down the roster to give us a set team of people who will be on the Avengers on this run. And possibly we might see some other characters join down the road. And I really do like the opening pages of the storyline. And the reason why, because it's Kurt Busiek and George Perez pointing out the fact that with 64 different members of the Avengers, they all can't go on the same mission going after one particular person. Now, technically they can. Like, I feel like with a roster of the Avengers like this, you should be able to handle most situations across the world. Most definitely when it comes to a character like Whirlwind. Now, for me personally, Whirlwind is a D-list character. I do know that there are some fans out there who truly do love the character a lot, but for me personally, he's okay. Now, with that being said, when it comes to our heroes arriving, they come with most of the Avengers just there to take down one guy. The problem is that they keep stepping over one another. And with them doing that, it allows Whirlwind to get away. And so it's Kurt Busiek and George Perez saying, like, here is the reason why we got to bring down the roster because there's way too many characters all trying to do the same thing at once to bring down one particular bad guy. Now, at the same time, it's really more of them saying we can't write a whole run with all 64 different members of the Avengers. Like, of course, we got to do some trimming. So it's going to be the core members of the Avengers kind of working on the final draft of the roster. So, for example, you're going to have Iron Man, Thor, and of course, Captain America, the big three, be on the team. Now, for Wasp and Giant Man, they're not going to be on the team at all. You also have the book kind of give us another character, and that'll be Dwayne Jerome Freeman. Now, for Jerome, he is going to be the liaison for the Avengers on this run. But it's also this part of the book telling us, like, okay, here are some characters who are not going to be on the team, who were on the team in recent years. Like, for example, Stingray, he's gone. Sandman, gone. Photon, Firebird, Darkhawk, Spider-Woman, The Living Lightning, and also Black Widow. Just like that, 8 characters off the board and gone. Now we do switch over to the Scarlet Witch and also the Vision. Now, when it comes to this section right here, it's really more of the book telling us that these two characters will be on the final roster of the Avengers on this run. But it's also the book reminding us that for the Vision and the Scarlet Witch, they're no longer married. They got divorced a while back. But here's the thing, because in this run, we're also seeing the return of Wonder Man over time, who was also a love interest for the Scarlet Witch as well. And so with the coming back in the picture, it's kind of like, okay, we're getting that love triangle all over again. Now, with all that being said, when it comes to the Scarlet Witch, right now she's very concerned for Vision and hoping that he'll be properly healed up. Now, for Vision, he's able to appear as a hologram, but the way he's acting right now, he's not really trying to allow the Scarlet Witch back into his life again. Really, it's him saying like, hey, we can be on the same team again, but like I'm gonna keep you at a distance. And for the Scarlet Witch, that's not fair. It does seem like she wants him back, but of course he does not. And that was the big thing with these two characters in the 1990s, where they kind of go back and forth. There's one in time where she wanted him, he didn't want her, or vice versa. And so right now, we're back at that point once again, and she just walks away. Now we also see a few more members not going to be on the Avengers. So like She-Hulk, she won't be there. Not Black Knight, not Crystal, not Scarlet Witch. Like they're all off the board just like that in like 4 or 5 panels. Now with that being said, we do see Hawkeye right now still hanging out with Hercules, Falcon, and also Moondragon. So we're kind of left to wonder, will these 4 characters possibly join the team? Now, we do have some characters who are part of the New Warriors, and they do hear the fact that Whirlwind is out there right now. So you have the New Warriors leave to go handle Whirlwind. Now, for Hawkeye, he's kind of like, I should go follow them. We also kind of get the idea that Beast will not be on the team either. Now, with that being said, we're also seeing Beast at the moment doing some tests on Carol Danvers. Around this time, she was called Miss Marvel. Now, when it comes to Carol Danvers, it kind of felt like this was Marvel slowly beginning the process of bringing her down. And the reason why I'm saying that, because for Miss Marvel, she had officially lost her ability to turn into her binary form. With that being lost, she's not as powerful as she used to be in the past. Now, for Miss Marvel, she will not tell the other heroes about this. And the main reason why, because she feels like if she does, then most likely she will not be given a chance to be on the Avengers. Now, we also see the fact that you have the Scarlet Witch continuing to think about Wonder Man. But while she's sitting there on the windowsill thinking about him, you didn't have, someone come by, I think it's Wasp actually, come by and say, like, hey, listen, they're ready for you. So just like that, she's now on the final roster. Now, the next few pages are really more of us just seeing more and more characters leaving the team. Swordsman, Namor, Machine Man, Black Panther. They're also not going to be on the new Avengers team either. The same thing goes for Moondragon, D-Man, Tigra. Again, we're seeing more and more characters just leaving left and right. The roster being trimmed down even more. But we then shift over to Carol Danvers again. Now, for Carol Danvers, we kind of learn here there's a possibility that she may be having a drinking problem. And the reason why I'm saying that, because, well, she's right now behind the bar, but in this particular run, it's kind of been building up to this moment. And the reason why, because there has been a lot of different things happen to her over the last few decades in Marvel Comics for her character. So, of course, by this point, she's kind of had reached that point. But for Iron Man, he does walk in the room and say, hey, listen, it's now time for us to talk to you about the possibility of joining the team. Now, I kind of want to go ahead and shift back over to Justice and also Firestar. And the reason why, because you do have those two characters going out of their way to find Whirlwind. Now, for Justice, he does bring up what happened earlier, the whole idea that you had too many Avengers going after Whirlwind at once. And so with the two of them just being there, they're not really able to kind of step over one another. They work great as a team. And with them being able to work great as a team, they were able to defeat Whirlwind very easily. Now, with them being able to achieve that, you didn't have Hawkeye appear. And with Hawkeye appearing there, it's kind of him wanting to say, like, listen, I think it'll probably be a good idea to put you two guys on the Avengers. It's him kind of promoting the idea that he'll sponsor them. He'll talk to Steve Rogers about putting the two characters on the team for the final roster. Except when they do get back over to the mansion, you have Steve inform Hawkeye, like, hey, listen, there was only one spot left on the team, and that last spot was for you, Hawkeye. Now, for Hawkeye, he feels kind of bad because he truly believed in the possibility of getting these two guys on the team. And so for Hawkeye, he does try to discuss things with Steve Rogers. Now, for Firestar, she wants to leave because of her mindset, she was just told no. And honestly, she kind of was. But for Steve Rogers, he said, you know what? I thought about it. How about this? You two can be on the team, but as reserve members. If we need you guys, you gotta answer the call. But also, we are going to train you guys as well. And so, just like that, for Justice and Firestar, they have now officially joined the Avengers. And so that is when the last page we do see the final roster of the team: Hawkeye, Thor, Scarlet Witch, Captain Marvel, sorry, Miss Marvel, Captain America, Iron Man, Firestar, Justice, and Vision. This right here will be our Avengers team as we go through our coverage in the next few videos when it comes to this particular run. Now, as we dive into issue number 5, we're really picking up with the idea of that two-part storyline where it's going to be the Avengers fighting against the Squadron Supreme. Now, as we dive into the opening pages, we do pick up with Thor at first arriving at Avengers Mansion. Now, this right here just reminds me that we have to sit down and actually talk about Thor around this time in Marvel Comics. And the reason why, because when it came to Thor coming back into the main Marvel universe after leaving behind the Heroes Reborn universe, he found out that Asgard was completely wrecked. Like, it's been destroyed. But on top of that, all the Asgardians there have gone missing as well. And so for Thor, it's him right now trying to figure out what happened to his people. And so now we shift over to Carol Danvers and also Steve Rogers. Now, when we do, this begins the process of the whole idea of the different members of the Avengers realizing that there's something going on with Carol. And the reason why I'm saying that, because you have Steve ask Carol to go binary to handle the robots that she's currently fighting against, except she doesn't. Now, for Steve, he wants to know why in the world she did not go binary when he had told her to in the middle of their training session. But it's Carol right now not really ready to tell them like what's going on with her. And so she does avoid his question by saying, hey, you know what? Let's go ahead and eat some cookies and relax after having that long training session. But of course, for Steve, he wants some answers. He wants to know what in the world could possibly be going on with Carol. He's kind of wondering, can she no longer turn binary? But now we have to shift back over to, well, Iron Man, also Vision. Now, for Iron Man, he's currently working on the body of Vision, but you do have Vision appear as a hologram to be able to communicate with Iron Man. Now, for Iron Man, he was able to easily pick up on the idea that there's something going on between Wanda and also the Vision. And so it's Tony telling Vision, like, dude, it clearly shows you want to get back with her. If you want to, you gotta make the first move. Just sit down and talk to her. But for Vision, he's still acting like he does not want Wanda back in his life. But clearly it shows that he does. And speaking of Wanda, we do see her right now with Hawkeye as the two of them went out shopping. Now, for Wanda, the reason why she went out shopping is to clear her mind on the idea of Vision, but to also clear her mind on, well, Wonder Man. Because in the last story arc, it was her magic that technically brought him back to life. And then we saw him kind of, once again, give up his life, sacrifice himself as a way to bring down Morgan Le Fay. And so for Wanda, it's her kind of wondering in the possibility of Wonder Man still being alive. But while you do have the two characters talking to one another, you didn't have them both be called back to Avengers Mansion. And so for our heroes, they're now being given their first mission. Now, their first mission is to go help out some people. Let me explain why. You see, when it came to Project Pegasus, they are this organization that goes around to study different scientific things. But when it came to the government, they had found this spaceship that had belonged to Thanos' fleet at the bottom of the ocean. So they sent out Project Pegasus to go investigate. But on the way over to that area, well, somebody shot the plane out of the sky. And so right now, they need a rescue team. And of course, that would be the Avengers. Now, for Hawkeye, he does kind of express the idea that he's not really happy about being used as a rescue team and not really being used to go after like some dangerous person. But either way, you do have the Avengers leave. Now, when they do arrive, you do have Captain America give everyone a task to kind of handle for the time being. But when it comes to Hawkeye, he gives him a very simple task. Now, for Hawkeye, he does express once again how upset he is here at this moment. But for Steve Rogers, he did not do it on purpose. It's really more Steve saying, like, we got a job to do. We got people who are currently in need of some kind of help. And so for Hawkeye, he does express his anger, but this is a callback to an earlier storyline that we had covered. In that storyline, you basically had Steve go around to figure out who he could help out to break away from Morgan Le Fay's spell. One of the first few guys he selected was Hawkeye, but he also kind of mentioned the fact that he has a lot of respect for Hawkeye. And so ever since then, for Hawkeye, he kind of looked at Steve a tad bit different as somebody who now has a lot of respect for. And so for Hawkeye to be used as a guy for a simple task is him saying to himself, like, oh, it does seem like Steve has no longer that big respect he had for me in our last adventure. But while you have our heroes trying their best to help out the innocent people in the plane crash, you didn't have our heroes be confronted by the Squadron Supreme. Now, the Squadron Supreme is actually a group of characters we have talked a lot about in the earlier videos on my channel. The Squadron Supreme are really Marvel's version of the Justice League. Now, over the years in Marvel Comics, you had different versions of this team. And so for this version right here, they come from Earth 712 or Earth S. It goes by a lot of different names. But like I said, for the Squadron Supreme, it's just Marvel's version of the Justice League. So Hyperion is basically Superman, and the list goes on and on. Now, in recent years in Marvel Comics, now, for the Squadron Supreme, they have not been able to go back to their universe. So, unfortunately for them, they're currently stuck on Earth. Now, they've been around since the heroes had disappeared thanks to Heroes Reborn. And so, for the Squadron Supreme, they were kind of told that basically the Avengers here right now are not the Avengers. Now, this right here will become very important for the overall storyline for Marvel Comics in the 1990s, but especially for the Avengers and Thunderbolts. I'll explain more here in a moment. But for our heroes, they're right now trying to convince the Squadron Supreme, like, no, it's us, it's the Avengers. Now, for the Squadron Supreme, they never truly did like the Avengers, but the Avengers did gain their respect. But either way, for the Squadron Supreme, they believe that the Avengers here are imposters. So, of course, it does lead into an all out battle. Now, there is something I do want to point out, and that would be the Scarlet Witch and her magic. And the reason why, because in the middle of her battle against the Squadron Supreme, you do have her being able to once again bring Wonder Man back to life. And so we're kind of left to believe that the idea of Wonder Man being alive or coming back to life is definitely tied into her magic. And so you do have Wonder Man being able to help out the heroes to fight against the Squadron Supreme. Now, at the end of the battle, you didn't have Steve say, let's go ahead and retreat. And the reason why, because they only came there for one mission to help out the people on the plane, but also kind of like, listen, we right now need to retreat to figure out why in the world the Squadron Supreme believes that we are imposters. Now, there is something else I do want to point out, and technically, when it comes to Hawkeye, he does bring up a good point here. For the Squadron Supreme, almost every single time they do appear in a storyline fighting against the Avengers, usually they have been tricked or they have been mind controlled. And so for our heroes, they're kind of wondering, like, okay, is this one of those things where you guys have been tricked or mind controlled into believing that we are imposters? Either way, you do have the Avengers go back to Avengers Mansion. And when they do arrive at Avengers Mansion, it's really more now us seeing the Avengers having a conversation with Dwayne. Now, with Dwayne being there, is him saying, like, hey, listen, as y'all liaison for the government, I've been told, like, Right now, they want some proof to prove that you guys are not imposters. Because around this time in Marvel Comics, you had the Thunderbolts here. And the Thunderbolts were like the replacement for the Avengers while they were away in Heroes Reborn. The problem is that by this point in time in Marvel Comics, the Thunderbolts got in trouble, but also you had the Skrulls being able to work their way into different parts of the world. And so, unfortunately, right now, for the government and also the public, they want some answers. They want actual proof that the Avengers are the Avengers. The last page of this chapter, we are given an image of somebody behind the scenes who was trying to control the Squadron Supreme as a way to attack the Avengers to allow his guys enough time to steal the weapons off that spacecraft that had belonged to Thanos' fleet. And so we're now kind of left to wonder, who could this mysterious guy be? And so as we get into the final chapter of this video, we're really now picking up with the Avengers continuing to watch the news talk about them possibly being imposters. You have the Squadron Supreme on the news just continuing the idea of saying like, yeah, those guys are the imposters. We were told by Project Pegasus that they are imposters. Now, you do have Thor getting very upset, but you also have Hawkeye once again express the idea of how angry he truly is. Now, with Hawkeye being angry, is Hawkeye once again believing that he knows what is the right move to take here when it comes to the Squadron Supreme. Now, for Steve, he does try his best to calm Clint down, but Clint's not trying to listen. And so you have Steve ask Clint to let's go talk in the other room here for a moment. Now, before we actually see that conversation, we switch over to Wanda and also Carol. Now, for Wanda, is her still thinking about the idea of like, okay, I got Vision in my life right now, who's my ex-husband, and I also have Simon who keeps popping up left and right out of nowhere when I do use my magic. Now, she also runs into Carol again. And when it comes to Carol, we get the idea that yes, she has become an alcoholic. And the question is now, why? Well, like I said earlier, it's everything that happened to her over the last few decades in Marvel Comics, just building up the point where she can no longer technically handle it anymore. But getting over to that conversation with Steve and also Hawkeye, it's really more Steve kind of saying, like, listen, on this team, there's only one leader, and that one leader right now is me. And so the thing is, we have to work together because if we're both out there trying to lead, then most likely one wrong move can be someone's life. And so it's Steve right now telling Clint, like, dude, I get it. You were a great leader when you had the West Coast Avengers, but that's in the past now. Now here we are in the present. And with us now being in the present, we have to work together as a team because we really can't afford any types of mess up here. And so you do have Hawkeye realize what Steve is saying. Now, for Steve, he does have a plan. That plan is to go over to where Project Pegasus is at. And the reason why, because for the Squadron Supreme, that's where their base at. And so, with the team being away from their base at the moment, you have the Avengers believing that they can head over to Project Pegasus to kind of get a better idea of what officially is going on there. And so now we switch over to our heroes arriving at Project Pegasus. Now, when they do arrive there, they run into the project administrator of Project Pegasus, and that would be Andrew. Now, for Andrew, he's also working for the government, and so he wants to make sure like the Avengers are not imposters before allowing them inside the base. Now, for Carol, this right here is one of her moments. And the reason why, because she does recognize one of the guards there who tried to fingerprint her a long time ago when she had joined the Avengers. And so because of that, you didn't have Andrew realize, okay, cool, you know what? The Avengers are not imposters. They now have clearance to walk around the entire base. Now, while they're doing that, you also have Andrew kind of show different people out there who have the ability to play, with someone else's minds or to mind control people. Now, for our heroes, while they're walking around, that is when they realize they got some trouble. and that would be the Squadron Supreme. Now, of course, this leads into another battle between both teams. Now, when it comes to this battle, you do have our heroes being able to hold their own, but you also have a few things happen in this battle. Like, for example, the idea that you have the Scarlet Witch being able to bring Wonder Man back to life. Now, when she does that, of course, kind of like, okay, cool. We now definitely know that it's her magic that's really being able to bring Wonder Man back to life. But the question is, why can't he stay alive as soon as she's done using her magic? Now, you do have another thing happen, and that would be Steve asking Carol to go into her binary form. Now, of course, she says no because, as we all know, she can no longer access that form. But for Steve Rogers and the rest of the team, they don't know that. Now, the battle does end. We have our heroes realize what's really happening here. When it comes to Andrew, we do find out that Andrew is actually an imposter. And matter of fact, he is a character known as the Corruptor. Now, I'm not going to sit down and try to explain the whole idea of the origin of the Corruptor. Just know that he has the ability to play with other people's minds. And so once you have our heroes being able to bring down the corruptor, you then have our heroes being able to work things out with the Squadron Supreme just like that. Now, when it comes to Steve, he does want to question Carol on the idea of why she did not use her binary form. But once again, you have Carol not telling the heroes what's going on with her, but matter of fact, she begins to attack the team verbally because she believes that for Steve Rogers and the rest of the team, if she can no longer access her binary form, that could possibly mean she's no longer able to be on the team. And so she flies away. So we do learn who is the big bad guy at the end of this storyline. It's a character known as Imus Champion. Now, for Imus Champion, he kind of goes way back in the early days of Avengers comics, but it's him right now trying to make moves behind the scenes. And really, in a later video, I'll sit down and try to explain who this character is and like what is his end game. But right now, this is where we're going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.